Well, thank you so much, David. Thank you, Skip. I want to thank Nikolai as well. Is he here? Thanks for making this technology work for us. We had some color issues and some other things, so just bear with us as you see some weird contrasts and whatnot. And I want to thank Stephanie Street, who is an old friend of mine, who helps run the Clinton Foundation, and Bruce Lindsay, who I've known since I was that little tyke that Skip referenced. I actually met Skip in New Hampshire, not Little Rock, when you came up as a FOB, friend of Bill / Arkansas Traveler. One of my proudest Little Rock moments was when I was named an Arkansas Traveler, which I have in a frame. And it's incredible, really, to be back in Little Rock and to have an opportunity to do this work of service through music. I also want to thank Bob G., who gave me an incredible tour back there. Bob, thank you so much. He said something that I found really interesting this morning. He said that President Clinton didn't want to set up a school for public administration. He wanted to set up a school for public service, and the difference being that the former is about managing something, which of course is very important, but the latter is about making things happen. And I think that resonates with me quite a bit as a social entrepreneur and somebody who's been trying to make something that you see in the video and you hear Skip and David talk about it. It seems so obvious on the one hand, but on the other hand, you're trying to launch a nonprofit at the bottom of a recession. It's music oriented. People sort of may not get it. They think music for national service. They don't think music as service. They think of music for another cause, for African causes or for environmental causes. And so the work in trying to help people to understand that music is the cause and that it's an untapped, unrealized, unlimited resource that we could be bringing into our schools and to other institutions and into our communities more strategically has been really the work of the Center for Music National Service. So it's actually, this is not my first music-related gig with related to President Clinton. My first one was in, well, there I am way back in the day in New Hampshire with the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. And you can see that, you know, one thing I want to mention is that Bill Clinton has been an incredible inspiration as a social entrepreneur and as a humanist. And the two aren't exactly the same. You know, I remember in New Hampshire, the thing that distinguished him as a candidate, aside from being, you know, Teflon and ridiculously articulate and communicative, he had a plan. And I was, my wife and I just moved, and I've been going through boxes of old stuff, and I'm seeing these old plans that Bill Clinton had, and he really talked about solving problems in a business way, and that was unique. I think the other guy at the time that was doing it was Paul Tsongas, but everyone else was like, hey, this is how I feel, this is what we should do, but he had a plan, and that was unique. And the other thing that captured me about him was that not only did he have that business sense, but he had a heart for service and a humanist's heart, that he was talking about race relations and transcending differences early on in New Hampshire. That's not a big issue in New Hampshire. I grew up in New Hampshire. That's not one that people think about enough, but he had the courage and the vision to really put that at the core of what he was about and about his message. And I thought the New Covenant speech, which was about opportunity on the one hand, responsibility on the other hand to strengthen community, was embodied really in the national service movement. And so what we're really trying to do is to add a third component to that, which is music. So before he was an entrepreneur and a politician, he was a musician, and I just wanted to point that out. I grabbed that off the internet this morning. But my first gig actually was at the end of the campaign. There was a Razorback rally at the end of the 92 campaign up there on Old Main, and I was doing the site, and I actually handed Bill Clinton his saxophone when he jammed with the band up there. So I wanted to show that. And just to be self-indulgent for a minute, during the Clinton library inauguration, Stephanie Street was my internal champion for my music. I was a full-time musician at the time. There were 2 bands invited to come. How many of you were here that day down in Little Rock? So you remember what that day was like. It was cold and freezing and raining. And so one band was U2 and the other was my band. They were supposed to play. That was one of my biggest almosts as a musician. I was supposed to play at this event right here. Bono got the main stage, but you guys had me teed up for the barbecue, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow lunch. There's supposed to be 10,000 people there, and it was me and my 4 bandmates with a bottle hitting on canisters and making music. I'm not trying to promote alcoholism, but we were slightly depressed, and that was just the direction the band went that day. It was a fun day, though, regardless. The other person who's been a great inspiration for Music National Service in my life, really, the late, great Eli Siegel, who was the creator of AmeriCorps. He also brought me in very early to the Clinton campaign. Here's a shot where he's introducing me to the president when I had an opportunity to work, as David said, on AmeriCorps. And Eli, too, would be the first to say he's not a musician, but he was also somebody who the president looked to, whether it was for national service or ending welfare as we know it, as he used to say, as he would go to make things happen. So I really have sought inspiration in bringing a third element from social entrepreneurship to humanism, I think, and peacemaking, and music. And music really is this untapped resource, I think. So it's definitely an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit more about our work. About 2007, some of the national service heads in here may remember this famous moment for the national service movement where we got on the front page of, we're on the cover of Time magazine. And sort of the gist of the article, and I think it was a maturing of the national service movement, was recognizing that service for service sake is a nice thing, it's a beautiful thing, but it's hard to sell in a tough economy sometimes. And so you sort of pat it on the back and you say, hey, if we have enough money for it, we'll kick down a little bit for the president's pet project. But the national service movement was getting sharper than that and was recognizing that service, in fact, is a strategy to meet unmet needs in the education, in the environment, in public safety, in all these different areas. And I was particularly struck as a musician at the time by this juxtaposition here where you open up the magazine and you had this big wide open thing, and basically the message being anybody can serve. So you had a military guy, you got your sort of Teach for America looking person, of course you got City Year, shout out. Woo woo, make some noise. Thank you for being here, City Year. And your firefighters and your teachers. But you don't see anybody in there with a cello or a guitar or a keyboard. You don't see anybody who's into the arts. You don't see that being recognized in the national service movement. And yet, so much of our work in engaging young people and engaging citizens in their community is about meeting them where they are. And if you look at that Rosie Riveter on the cover, she's got the earbuds in, doesn't she? You know? And so I feel like that's sort of what this has been about, is sort of getting past people's cognitive dissonance with the notion that music is just about entertainment, it's just about performance, and it's just like oxygen, it's everywhere. So what would it mean to apply it strategically in these different areas? And that's what I hope to tell you a little bit about. Music has been demonstrated, and we've shown through our program, and it's been proven in many, many instances to address critical issues in major issue areas like education, where the dropout rate is the main problem. And so music programming has been shown to keep kids in school. In fact, the highest, 96% of principals when polled about did music affect their high graduation rate, 96% of them said yes, it had a big role in it. Our music and arts program had a big role in keeping our students in school. We know it increases positive behavior because it decreases when you make music. It lowers cortisol levels. A lot of the kids that are coming to schools today are stressed out. They're coming from tough environments. It's hard for them to sit down, just like it would have been for me. I was blessed to have music and arts and recess and sports at my school. But if you had asked me to sit down all day long and do math and reading all day and then do it again after school, that would have been tough. But if you can get people to focus, and you can learn to focus and learn that you can be good at something, then that can translate into other areas. Through MusicianCorps, as David said, we're also putting MusicianCorps fellows. Next year, we got an AmeriCorps National Planning Grant. We hope to expand in 12-13. We're going to call them MusicianCorps Mentors. So just to get the language straight. But we're working with kids. You know, music has been shown to be an effective intervention with kids who are isolated and adults who are isolated in institutional populations. We call them hidden audiences. And we've been able to work closely with kids there, and their parents and the people who work in those child life departments tell us all the time that, first of all, they're paying for it, and they don't have a lot of money, so we have Sight Match in our program. And they'll say it's the only thing that puts a smile on the kid's face. Lots of times will be the only thing that brings a child out and gives them the confidence and the desire to communicate. For special needs kids, it's been shown to, I don't know if anybody ever saw the HBO special Autism the Musical, but it has been shown, music engagement has been shown to be a very effective intervention in getting autistic kids to connect, to engage, and other types of disabilities. And all of these photos are from our work. The elderly, we do a lot of work in hospice environments and senior homes. There's nothing greater than to have some senior folks shuffle into a room and not know what's going to happen, and next thing you know, they've got an instrument and they're jamming with us. Here is one of our MusicianCorps fellows who's also a board-certified music therapist working in a hospice teaching guitar. You know, with early onset dementia and even Alzheimer's, you can learn Sudoku or you can learn to play an instrument. You know, they have a very similar effect on strengthening neuron connections in the brain. And in fact, with Alzheimer's, it's been shown time and time again that one of the last memories ever to go are musical memories because they're lodged so deeply. So if we've got something that's lodged so deeply and is so deeply part of who we are as human beings, how can we use it strategically? With our wounded warriors and with our veterans at VA hospitals, we currently have an initiative with the Center for Veterans Mental Health, where we are looking to put MusicianCorps mentors in Walter Reed Hospital and also on the West Coast in the coming year, working both with our wounded warriors, not just those who are musicians already and love music, but those who want to be around it. It can really help to change the culture of a VA hospital. I don't know how many of you have spent time in a veterans hospital, but this is something that can really help to change the cultural dynamic there. And what's exciting is we bring the students out. So those of you that are proponents of service learning, this isn't just about keeping students in school and doing a performance there and hoping that one of their parents or guardian shows up. This is about getting them out and visiting other communities and being affirmed for the work that they're doing and recognized by other communities. Some of whom also have it tough in a different way. And so you see these kids light up, and they've been coming out on their holidays. So Martin Luther King Day, you heard a little bit about that. Veterans Day, these are days they don't need to come to school. They're getting in a van with us, and we're going out and doing these days of service. Here's a veteran who just wanted to roll up and hop on and start playing himself at a recent event in the Menlo Park Veterans Hospital. This is a funny shot. I just wanted to add this last one. In 2007, when I committed to doing this, I actually, somebody captured this. Esther Gooley, I don't know if you remember her, but we had Friends of President Clinton event in 2007 in San Francisco that I was invited to, and I was tired and I had long hair and I was at the end of my kind of music thing. I was trying to figure out what I was doing, and I had been toying with this idea of launching a musical Peace Corps. And the night I committed to doing it, and the moment I committed to doing it is right here. And I mentioned it to Bill Clinton at that event. And I said, what do you think about a Peace Corps for musicians, a musical Peace Corps? And got his attention. He just the idea of it got his attention. He said, there's precedent for that. Get me some paper on that. In the WPA, they did that. And so I sought to distinguish for him the difference between the WPA, which was focused on public art, which of course we support, funding artists to do their art, and art as a strategy. So it's been our view and our position as the only arts organization that was part of the Service Nation Coalition that really drove this new increase in funding for AmeriCorps, that much like service needed to position itself accurately as a strategy for getting things done, so too must the arts recognize that in budget constricted environment that we need to communicate our work in terms of what we're getting done in the community. And that's what I was talking to him about there. I look kind of mean and mad, but really we're just engaged and I'm fired up. So that's really takes us to the work of the Center for Music National Service. We're really about two things in the long term. One is to build an institution that recognizes and supports and promotes the power of music for public good. The second is to build a program in the spirit of national service that can help strengthen and expand this field of work. We have, like I said, a planning grant from AmeriCorps right now we did the national pilot. You saw a little bit of that in the video. We have a planning grant now to expand in partnership, public-private partnership with the government through AmeriCorps. Maybe we can get something going down here in Little Rock. We were talking to Skip about that. The other piece is that we are doing advocacy and we're doing public education around this idea to keep really driving the notion. So one of the things that we launched was the Congressional Musicians Caucus. Got some members of Congress who like to jam themselves from both sides of the aisle at a time when it's sort of the debate is fractured at best and people are missing one another. There aren't that many things that actually bring people together and enable them to communicate. So the job of the Congressional Musicians Caucus is to promote bipartisan relations through music making and dialogue on the impact that music has on the lives of Americans, and also to come up with innovative policy strategies that incorporate music in the fields of education, health, and social policy. And we also hope to do some events with musicians on the Hill. Sorry about the faded part right there. I couldn't figure that out this morning. But I think one of our proudest accomplishments on the advocacy side was to be able to get musicians and artists recognized for the first time in national service legislation and as an education strategy in the Kennedy Serve America Act. And so this really creates a platform for us to do our work. There's no money set aside for it yet. We got to keep pushing for that. But the language is there. And so the activity and the recognition that musicians are public servants and can be when brought in directly. One of the things that I think is powerful about music, to go back to something David said, is he said it's really hard to communicate the power of music. And I think it's true for service as well. So once you get past the social entrepreneur side of this is how it works, and this is how we're doing attendance, behavior, and course performance, and this is how we're measuring it, you don't often get an opportunity to talk about that stuff which is more difficult to measure. And I think, City Year is an incredible model of that. I think in the last 5 years or so, the program has become really focused on these areas that I just mentioned. But for so long, I think it was inspiring and was able to grow and people recognize it just by virtue of the fact that it was bringing people together, and through service, these other critical skills, these 21st century skills are developed. And I think that's really the next stage for social entrepreneurship and social enterprise, is how do we, and also for education reform, is how do we hone and develop these kind of fuzzy social and emotional skills, these skills around persistence, discipline, teamwork, critical thinking, courage, willingness to take a risk. I believe, and I think we're showing, and you can see right here in this photo, that those skills are honed and developed through creative practice, and I believe through service, when we engage ourselves in something larger than ourselves. So when a young girl is in a choir and she finds her voice in a choir, or somebody is in a band and they learn how to solo while listening to other people and know their role, or whether we're music appreciators and we're not instrumentalists, but we're going to the James Taylor show tonight, and we know that we're going to be sitting there listening to Fire and Rain, and for the first time all week, you know, you could have somebody who's a producer for Rachel Maddow sitting next to a birther, and they're just going to be smiling with, you know, hanging out, listening to James Taylor. And there aren't that many things in the world today that can do that. I wanted to, my wife, I forgot to bring this. I've had this hanging on my wall for probably 15 years. I forgot to bring it, and so my wife, technology is incredible today, she took a picture of it with her iPhone, sent it to me, and I plugged it in, and then Stephanie and Bailey were able to print it out for me. But in addition to Bill Clinton one day recognizing that the skills of entrepreneurship are probably the most important skills of the future, he also said there was another skill that's more important than any skill. And I was taken by this. He said, you think about how much time I spent as your president dealing with people around the world who are killing each other and killing each other's children because they refuse to get along, because they think they have to hate each other because they have religious, ethnic, or racial, or tribal differences, and it goes on and on. Why do they have to look down on each other? Why do they have to think they're good because somebody else is bad? The part of America that will carry us into the 21st century, more than scientific discovery, more than computers, those of you in the education space think STEM, which is technology, science, all that. More than anything else is we've got to show that we can prove that we're not like these other places. I want us to be able to not look down on anybody else to feel good about ourselves. And I want all of us to say we have an obligation to serve as citizens. So to me, one of the great messages that I've gotten from President Clinton and from Eli is that these two skills, the core skills of entrepreneurship, the core skills of public service, of making things happen, are fuzzier skills. The people who are great entrepreneurs are not always the best people at math and reading, okay? They have these other skills. And the other skill that's important is our ability to transcend difference so that we can see commonality. So Music National Service is about that, and you see it every day in the work that we do. This was on Martin Luther King Day, where we brought students from all over the city together to learn Lean On Me and make murals. And we also brought members from corporations, school administrations, parents, and we really showed that you could be doing a playground build, you could be doing a barn raising with Habitat for Humanity, or you could make and create art and music together. And music and art is service. So before I end, I would be remiss not to tell you exactly what we do, basically. I'm realizing I've come this far and haven't done that, and I want to take some questions. But basically, the Center for Music National Service is about promoting music as a public good strategy. We do so through direct service programs, education and advocacy, and leadership development. And obviously our flagship program is MusicianCorps. It's modeled on the AmeriCorps National Service model, which has been proven to be successful in all these other areas. We just decided if there's going to be a Green Corps and a Health Corps and a Teacher Corps and a this Corps and that Corps, why wouldn't we have a musician and an artist corps? Through our program, we train and place musicians to serve for a year in schools, in hospitals and other high-need institutional and community settings, and in return they get a living stipend as well as some other wraparound services, much like City Year, and health care. That's the work that we do, and I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but that would be one point to wrap things up. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I also could track down that video if you want to see this in action from MLK Day. I'll look over to Skip to see what our time is on this. Go ahead and show it. All right.
1, 2, service means a lot to this community, especially downtown Oakland. If the community just comes together and does things to help out, like this Martin Luther King Day, event, it just brings up the morale of the city and it helps.
It means a lot to me because I feel like I like to hear people's just feelings and stuff, and I just when I'm whatever mood I am, I can just listen to music, and I just feel like it can help you get through a lot of stuff to me.
It's really critical, especially just for expression.
Music is just something that lets people express themselves. It just, it doesn't come from anywhere but your heart, I mean, right now they're singing Lean On Me, which is just an inspirational song in itself, especially for today. Music just lifts your soul and makes you feel good.
Somebody to lean on. Please follow your pride. You gotta start that out there. You need
Claire?
Yes.
Claire?
So we have all the kids here today that are going to be learning music, instrumentals, and they're painting murals, and they'll come together at the end of the day for a big sing-along to Lean On Me, and it's just a great way for the kids in the Bay Area to come together and honor what Dr. King dreamed about, which is service.
Good morning! Everybody can be great. Everybody can serve. And that's why we're here today. That's what MLK said, and I believe it to be true.
When you talk about creativity, you're talking about something everybody has and everybody can express. That's what we're about at this school. That's what Music National Service is doing for students in other schools. Creativity, innovation, and the arts is the language of the millennium. We're the voice of the millennium. Let's keep it going.
So today is less about the product and more about the process.
Art, music, and service is uniquely powerful to bring people together.
Yeah, see? Civil tells you where the space is, right?
I think that the song that was chosen is particularly powerful lyrically already, being able to depend and work with each other. So when you call on me, brother, when you need a hand, we're talking about brothers and sisters joining together, of different races, background, cultures, which is exactly what we're doing today, just in much more of a music sense, which is great.
Check, 1, check 1, check 2, check.
Well, my daughter and I were looking for something special to do for MLK Day, and we went to the MLKday.org website, and we turned in our zip code, and this event came up, and it happens that my daughter's really interested in music, so it was a perfect fit for us. In everyone coming together this morning, I felt a really positive energy about the first of all, remembering Dr. King, but also connecting it to, kind of the bigger idea of service and the importance of the arts, which I think gets lost a lot.
What do you feel like MLK Day represents?
I think it represents unity. It's like when we walked around the block with the horns playing and singing Lean On Me, it made me feel like I was a part of something, and I really like that. And people were all stopping to look, and it was good. It was very heartwarming.
No matter how rich you are, no matter how poor you are, no matter what race, what gender, everybody was created equal, and everybody should be treated the same.
Today was a day where I got to interact with young students very early in their learning, and the types of things that you want to communicate to them. We're just more about motivating and helping kids to kind of get over the hurdle of maybe some of that self-consciousness that comes from your lack of experience, and just kind of get them playing in a larger group.
Kiff, you ready to take questions? Questions?
I'm happy to take
Okay, we got questions. Marinelle, wait for the microphone, please.
Funding. How do you get funding?
I was going to ask you that. Okay, I'd love to talk to you. It's a mix. I mean, we're still really early stage. Obviously, we have a fair amount of visibility. One of the challenges is originally we got foundation grant, to answer. We got a foundation grant from Hewlett Foundation. After about 2 years of running around spending my own money to get the idea out, they gave us $500,000 to start a pilot in the Bay Area and then see if we could gin up support in other cities, and that's how the national pilot came together. We also get some site match, which is very difficult if you want to work in schools because schools don't have money. And to the extent that they do, they need to spend it on raising test scores, and again, we get to that trying to make the case that this will help them graduate kids, and some of the principals that get it give us money. We have a Vista grant, a Vista AmeriCorps grant right now, and that helps us with our staff. We have 6 AmeriCorps Vistas, which is the core of my staff, and some individuals. But to be honest, I just hired a deputy director, which enables me to come out here and not worry about so much what's going on in the shop. We need to really raise some bucks to get this thing to scale right now.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Wait.
I work with the Department of Human Services, and part of my job is to process funding requests for AmeriCorps programs. The question I've got is how do y'all provide the instruments for the students?
In a lot of cases, we end up buying them. We also end up refurbishing them. You'd be amazed at how many schools have them just in a dusty closet in the basement. And we use Donors Choose. I mean, what would be great would be a national instrument partner that covered that piece for us. But we do it like everything else, just in the scrappiest way possible, but we come up with those instruments one way or another. Sometimes we have fundraisers just for instruments.
There's a question right here.
I'm a church musician, and there's always a big need for church musicians. Have you ever considered branching out into that aspect?
You know, a lot of our MusicianCorps, thank you, great question. A lot of our MusicianCorps fellows come out of the church. They're living Christians in terms of going to church frequently, and also kids from other faiths where they came up in music, and music and faith for them go hand in hand. We have thought about it. We've done some service events that are service oriented rather than faith communication oriented with faith-based organizations. We'd like to do more. So that is one of the things that we're looking at, and there's a faith-based initiative program going on right now with the Department of Education and the Corporation for National Service, so we're looking at that. But we are very interested in that, particularly on the side where parishes and again and synagogues and other organizations are reaching out to the community beyond their immediate community members to serve other populations.
Yes, ma'am, you had a question back here. Wait for the microphone, please.
My thoughts are kind of swimming and see if I could organize my thoughts. I
come from a classical background, trained violinist, and have also taught the Suzuki method for many years. And I'm not seeing a lot of string instruments. You mentioned a while ago, where's the cello? So I'm wondering about the statistics on some of your typical teachers. What do they look like? Are they college students? Are they someone who, my age that has had a long career? And if you, like the production there, the Lean on Me, not to be snobbish, but you could put that together and teach someone to sing and to play the drums, but is there a component in this where to be a pianist, that there's, what it takes, the lessons and the continual, is there any kind of component in that? Am I asking my question very well?
You're asking a great question that,
Okay.
in a lot of ways goes to the heart of kind of the difference between a standards-based Western traditional sequential music education and I think what we focus on, but let me take it in pieces since it came in a couple different pieces. First of all, our MusicianCorps fellows, this is the second year of our program. And so we have conservatory trained. We actually have a couple certified music teachers who've been MusicianCorps fellows. We've had classically trained musicians. We've started a violin program, as a matter of fact, in an elementary charter school in New Orleans. When you're talking about a day of service, which is sort of one of the things that we do one of these big events, community events like this, a quarter, MLK Day, Veterans Day, etc. And then twice a month we do smaller scale ones that typically involve percussion, keys, and maybe guitar and singing. Because a lot of times it's a first-time experience for people, and it's really about bringing people together through music and strengthening communities that way. In terms of doing a rigorous music education, if the resources are there, we can do it. What we need to be careful about doing is making sure that we supplement and not supplant existing teachers. And so when teachers are getting pink slips in the state of California and Illinois, two states where we've worked, we've needed to differentiate ourselves a little bit. And one of the ways that we do it is we sort of manage our musical claims, if you will. So a broader musical literacy, a full musical education would include critique, theory, notation, all sorts of pieces. We do that, as I said, in some cases. In other cases, as you can see in the video, the kids, they learn by doing sometimes, and they don't all learn in that traditional way. And so what we're really about is music making, and that's not always exactly the same as a traditional music education. So we support that and want to participate in that, and if we can get the resources and can convince the schools to give us the time to do that, can't beat it. You can't beat the rigor that comes through that. In the meantime, we're sort of taking a bring School of Rock into your school type model, which is that we're focusing on composition and performance primarily. We're going to get you to learn a song, and if that's Beyonce or that's something else, then so be it. You're going to learn that song, you're going to get up in front of people, you're going to perform that song, and you're going to learn to perform that song with your peers. And the 21st century, so-called 21st century skills that come from that, which is teamwork, which is perseverance, which is showing up at school, we think correlate well to those aspects of musical literacy. But that's a rich conversation that could go on for a while. But I respect the question. It's a great question.
Derek Rainey. D. Rainey, right here.
Thank you for coming. My name is Derek. I'm a first-year student here. And in light of the movement towards testing students to determine success, how has, I guess, the organization created a methodology to convince others that this is an essential component to learning?
Well, I think that goes a little bit to the question around measuring and STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, I think. And a lot of folks who are on the cutting edge of envisioning what arts can and should be in education. They talk about not STEM, they talk about STEAM, where they throw the A in there, and the A is for arts. But we have evaluation, and I did bring some of that from our first year. We found that, first of all, there was a study done by IBM recently where 1,500 CEOs were polled about what the most important skill and competency of the future would be, and if you can believe it, their response was creativity. And so it gets us back to that question of how do you measure creativity? How do you hone and develop that skill? Is that technology? Is that engineering? But I can tell you that 7 out of 10 teachers who were not part of MusicianCorps but worked in the school with students who were involved in MusicianCorps in our pilot year said their students were more creative. They also, more than half, agreed that they were more persistent, more collaborative, and they developed critical thinking skills and were better able to imagine possibilities for themselves. And also, over 60% of the students who did MusicianCorps said they wanted to come to school more because of MusicianCorps. They were more likely to come to school. And 67% of youth reported that they were more interested in helping out in their community. So for those principals and administrators that can make the connection between those statistics and what they're trying to achieve with their student body around graduation, that's how we do it. But again, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's something that requires ongoing communication. And also going where the energy is, because there's a lot of people who just get it. Principals who will acknowledge right off the bat, I wouldn't be here if I didn't come up on the clarinet. That's what made me go to school. Roland Fryer at Harvard, who's the youngest tenured professor at the Du Bois Institute there, who's a big education innovator, African American, told me right away, I'd love to do a study with you guys, because I can tell you the only thing that made me go to school when I was younger was sax. So it's taking a little bit of the anecdotal, making sure that you're also doing your numbers and doing your evaluation and communicating.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's say thanks to Kiff Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you very much.